sound speeds, and I'm speaking candidly to you YouTube content creators and podcasters out there. Why candidly? Well, why not? I mean, I could stand up here and speak 5,000 miles an hour to the camera and then edit it into a 4-minute long video. But if my target audience for this video is podcasters and content creators, then why do that? Why not just deliver the information candidly to you as if I'm speaking to you right here in front of me? And that way the message is going to be delivered just fine. Probably in a way that you would appreciate more than the normal way that I would speak rapid fire and what have you. Now, the reason I'm not going to go ahead and pay off the title of this video and the thumbnail right now is because in very much of the way as you have professional bakers that work in a kitchen together, if one baker says, here, you got to try this brownie, and they say, oh yeah, that's good. You know, I can see that there's some, what is that? There's got to be some peanut butter in there and there's some chocolate chips, but there's some extra stuff that I just can't tell what that is. And if the other baker that made it, it's like, yeah, you'll figure it out. It's not going to pay off nearly as well as that baker says, let me show you a couple of things. Have you ever seen this tool? Never have you ever done this before. I have tweaked this thing out. Now, I'm by no means a genius, especially in the world of podcasting or YouTube content creating. But what I am is a professional in the world of sound. And therefore, I'm going to be sharing with you my take and perspective on what I feel you definitely should be doing if you're going to be podcasting and content creating. Now, some of this may go straight into your head. You're like, you know what? I know this stuff. Fine. But sometimes hearing it worded a certain way helps it to actually stick. Or even better yet, sometimes it helps it to actually absorb and soak into your brain. Now, let the truth be known. I do have notes right there, but not because I don't know what I'm talking about. It's more to keep myself on topic. If you watch my channel, you know I take tangents all the time. As a matter of fact, you could argue that we're over a minute into this video already, and I haven't even started the actual content. Now, I don't do intros. I don't normally do this kind of thing and at least set it up. But my main point here is I want you to pay attention because I'm going to be setting up this entire thing and then paying it off at the very end. Please don't fast forward to the end. You don't want that because you're going to miss the whole message. Now, let's get into this. You were born a certain way, and you have certain cards that you were given to play in the game of life. I am not going to tell you right now that if you were born with no arms, you're not going to win a competition in clapping. Nor am I going to tell you if you're born without legs, that you're probably not going to win any kind of a marathon. However, what I can tell you is that if you were born with a particular voice, you should use that voice in the world of podcasting and content creating. Now, sure, if you're not happy with it, I'm sure you could get surgery and try to correct it. But the fact of the matter is, you don't need to be doing that. And chances are that kind of surgery is not going to be in your best interest, nor is it going to be something you have the money for, especially in the world of content creation or podcasting. Now, back in the 90s, I had a friend who worked at a radio station and he developed throat polyps and nodules. Now, what that means is there are these little bitty soft spots, which are the polyps, or hard spots on your throat, which are the nodules in the throat lining around your vocal cords, vocal folds. And they do go away in time simply by doing voice rests, vocal rests. Now, what creates those? Misusing your voice. If you misuse your voice and try to do all these things that your voice are not designed for, you can very easily hurt your voice. You could very easily damage what you were given. And that's not going to be good for you. He did ultimately have surgery because, yes, sure, you could go on vocal rest and actually recover from something like that, even though if you have surgery, you're going to at least remove the possibility of cancer developing on them, which is something to be aware of. Now, how does it feel if you do have something like that developing? Because you may end up thinking about this and saying, oh, how do I know I don't have these polyps or nodules on my throat? Well, if you have pain that goes from ear to ear, for example, or you have throat pain, anything that sounds like you got something like a lump in your throat, that could perhaps be an indicator that you are developing these. And you might need to give yourself vocal rest or perhaps look into something like an x-ray or whatever, or talk to a general practitioner, your doctor, and find out what they think. My point here is misusing your voice And making your voice do things it's not intended to is not ideal for you health-wise or even for your podcast. Now, me, I was born with a very high-pitched voice. I don't have a low, deep voice that just soothes anyone who listens to it. I've jokingly said in the past that my voice disrupts the flight patterns of bats as they're flying around, and that's probably true, let the truth be known. Dogs hear my voice much better than humans do because it's that high-pitched. But my point here is, my voice, I know it's higher. Do I go out of my way to sound any different? No. You have to know your voice, and that is very important. Me, I know that when I get amped up, I usually have a tendency of talking louder, and I speak higher pitched. If I'm more calmed and relaxed, I slow it down a little bit. My voice naturally comes down. It deepens up a little bit. That's just me and who I am. I could very easily speak 5,000 miles an hour and instantly start talking louder, and I'm very excited and blah, blah, blah. That's fine. I know me. This is me and my voice. The cards I was dealt. But here's my point here. Knowing yourself is very important. Now, when I worked in management, I used to tell people there's the ABCs that you need to contemplate: attitude, behavior, and characteristics. Your attitude is something that you bring to something. The attitude of either I'm a go-getter or, geez, I'm so defeated, I don't want to deal with this today. The B is the behavior. The behavior that you have, the procedure you follow, the way you do things. And C is characteristics, personal characteristics that make you up, the way you are. I can't correct, as a manager or a supervisor, the A or the C, the attitude or your characteristics. That is you. That is who you are. I hired you in management. I hired you for a particular job. But behavior, I can correct if it's not right. And that is what I'm trying to do here by mentioning that you have the A and you have the C down naturally. But the B is something that you sometimes will get a little bit off on. Now, the B is corrected through education and training. Many people that do podcasts are not professional sound guys. Many people that start with doing YouTube are not professional sound people. And you may or may not work in a studio. You may not work in the professional world of sound for film like I do. But my point here is, you are bringing everything you need to from your attitude and your characteristics. You already have that. The behavior, you may or may not need to tweak, though, if you want to be ideal for the kind of presentation that you're doing. Now, you may say, how do you know the kind of stuff I'm doing? I could do voices and do a whole podcast that takes place in a foreign, country that just, and I have to do an accent. Well, I'm not talking about that. Nor am I talking about if you're playing a child and you go the falsetto up on your voice, or you're trying to be a vampire or a Dracula type person and you have to do a special voice for that. I'm not talking about any of that stuff, because I'm speaking to you in what you're bringing, not necessarily if you're playing a character. Now, when you are doing your podcast, I ask that you do this. For the love of God, use your real voice when you podcast. Or do YouTube videos. I mean, it is not healthy, number one, as we've already discussed, for you not to use your regular voice the way it was designed to do. Yes, of course, if you're doing characters, that's a different thing. Andy Serkis, when he was doing the voice of Gollum for Lord of the Rings, he was not actually speaking in his regular voice, nor if he was doing the Gollum character and just was speaking in his normal voice, would it really work well? No, it wouldn't. He had to do a character for that, but it did tear his throat up, which is why he used Gollum juice to try to fix it. Now, that said, even singers have to learn the right way to sing and not from the throat. You have to breathe certain ways. Musicians also have to learn to breathe certain ways. You can't just pick up a flute and do continuous breathing, and constantly output air. You can't do that. You have to learn the technique behind it. And part of that is breathing. Part of it is just the technique that you're using. But what you're bringing to your own podcast or show on YouTube is what you need to bring from your person. Now, your audience is going to be there for you. Your audience is going to like you. They were there for you, especially your subscribers. They subscribe to you because they like who you are and the information or whatever you're bringing. They're not there to watch you try to put on a show. Try as I may, I will never sound like the legendary voiceover actor Don LaFontaine simply because I boost the bass on my voice. Doesn't work that way, does it? I don't suddenly sound so much better than I did before and sound all of a sudden like a radio host simply because I boosted the bass on my voice. Do I sound better this way? You tell me. Chances are you're going to say no because, and here's a very important note for you, your voice is naturally balanced a certain way. I don't need to have a very artificial bass boost in the lower part of my voice that makes no sense because of the way my vocal cords resonate through my chest, through my neck, through my cheeks, my head. All of this is part of the way that my voice is made. And of course, it also has to do with the way that it is shaped in my mouth, the use of my tongue. Now, many cultures in different countries are proficient in certain sounds, just like we are here in America. For example, some cultures have a problem with T sounds or R sounds or N sounds. And some cultures, like Americans, do not have the natural click sound that some countries in Africa do. They naturally can add a click into words and it's seamless, just like we are with other letters. I can't say my name is Alan because you heard how I was trying that, but I had to pause to do the click and then I resumed the regular speech pattern that I was used to. My voice doesn't flow from Al to the click to the Lin very well. But I can't say Alan, which is an L sound, and an N sound, which some cultures would have an issue with. I have some Chinese friends, for example, who were from China originally, and now they're here in America. And they used to always call me Aaron because they could not pronounce Alan correctly. And he would say, Aaron, and I would say, yes. And that was just the way that we were and the way he was naturally able to formulate words. It wasn't making fun of him. It was just the reality of the situation. Just like everybody has to shape words certain ways, perhaps based on your culture, your training, or perhaps it's something like you had braces. If you had braces like I did for a while, you have these little brackets all over your teeth. Your lips have to go over those and you have to relearn how to speak, I guess, natural. Because first, when you get braces, usually we end up cutting up the inside of your mouth a bit and you'd be like, oh, these are so uncomfortable. And you'd feel all these little chunks of skin on the inside of your mouth that were raw because you felt like the braces were shredding it. And I remember that. I don't know if any of you would remember that because I do know somebody who recently got braces and they're like, it's not really that way anymore. I'm like, yikes. Well, they've just taken all the fun out of that, didn't they? But my point here is the way you shape your words around your braces, when you suddenly get the braces removed, sometimes you might find yourself having a little bit of a speech impediment. Perhaps you could have more sibilance in your voice than you did before. Perhaps there's a little bit of like the loose lips kind of sound that some people have when they just kind of you know what I'm talking about? It's kind of, it almost sounds like the lips are flapping a little bit more than they're used to. That could perhaps be because they're used to their lips going around their teeth that have braces on them, and they're trying to untrain themselves from that. And because of this, their voice could sound different. But here's my point. Yes, there is speech therapy out there for people that were born with perhaps not the ability to reproduce sounds with their mouth the way that they hear it. Just like podcasters and YouTube content creators can go through vocal training in order to learn how to properly say words. Now, there is sometimes articulation issues that people have when they're doing speech for a YouTube video or for podcasts. And that is somebody that perhaps might slur their words a little bit. They just kind of talk like this and they just kind of blast through it and they don't really say a whole lot and they're not really articulating very well and you don't know what they're saying. But there's also the opposite, over-articulation. That is more if you are saying every single little bitty word as if you are trying to make it very well defined. Every single little bitty word and sound is emphasized. It's very straining on my voice to try to do that because I'm speaking not normally. I'm not speaking the way I naturally am now. I'm not saying for you to just slur your words, nor am I saying go out and over-articulate everything. Find a middle point. Find the way that you naturally speak. And if you find yourself needing to perhaps improve the way you speak for public address, then by all means do so. A couple of the sounds that come out most when you over-articulate are hard T's and very sibilant S's. Hard T's, well, I don't know what you are saying. Hard T's and sibilant S's. Those things, like the hard T's, are going to perhaps pop a microphone, and the S's are going to be something you're going to run a de-esser on. Both of those things are things that you usually will try to correct in a post process, just like over-breathiness. If you find yourself taking too many breaths and it is very irritating to you, and you find that you are just that right there. It's gonna hyperventilate me if I keep doing that. But that's my point right there, is that a lot of those little bitty things right there, mouth clicks and pops from you trying so hard to articulate exactly what you are saying, and the sibilant S's, those things right there are things that are going to be corrected in post, right? I mean, you're going to want to correct those things in post because, let the truth be known, yes, you want your sound to be detailed, but here's a great way to think about this. When you're speaking to someone from about 3 feet away, you know how someone's supposed to sound. And if you're speaking to someone at the end of an auditorium, like, for example, you're a stage actor, you might need to over-articulate your words because you're trying to speak to people that are on average 20, 30, 50, 100 feet away from you, and you want them to be able to hear the detail in your voice. Detail is lost over distance. I've talked about this many times in the past. If someone whispers in your ear, you're going to hear every little all those little mouth crinkle sounds. You're going to hear every breath. You're going to hear every whistle of their nose, every little bitty breath that they take in. Every little bitty thing is going to be magnified because it's right there in your ears. Now, if you're speaking into your microphone, that is the ear that you're speaking into. You don't need to worry about losing detail over distance when the person's ear is only about a foot, or in my case, probably closer to 15 inches away from me. Notice also I'm not using a pop filter because, well, I tell you what, I don't want to get ahead of myself just yet. My point here is when you're talking about detail, one of the things about it is that you do not want to overemphasize things because that's too much detail, too much to process, and then it ends up in your audio signal and you have to post-process it out because it's too much. What you're going to want to do is avoid pops and crinkles and breathing and stuff by backing off on your microphone ever so slightly, because if you're right up on your microphone, what happens? You push the proximity effect on the microphone, and let me give you an example of this. If I suddenly get all the way up on this microphone, then I feel it right here in front of my face, and I have a tendency now of not wanting to speak nearly as loud. That's changing the way I am speaking into this now because I'm lower. I feel like I need to put on a character because I'm on this microphone. You're going to start to get lost if I keep doing this over and over again. This is not me. Now, it's me doing a little bit of overemphasizing, but if I'm trying to create some Don LaFontaine type sound, it's not going to happen. Just like if I boost my bass, it's in my voice, it's not going to happen. It's distracting, just like crinkling on a lav mic is. If I'm way up on this microphone trying to sound like somebody I'm not. Again, correctable in post. It's not a natural effect for me to be up in your ear talking this way to you. Now, even if I were to speak quieter, now you're hearing so much more detail. And because in post I do level it and bring all the levels up to about more or less the same thing, it's still not natural to hear me speaking into your ear this way. Or the microphone, because it is basically the ear that I'm speaking into. Bass doesn't travel well over a distance. Now, I don't want to overwhelm you here. Bass does not travel well over distance, not like mids and highs do. Therefore, a very natural type of effect from someone who you're speaking to, a very natural way for someone to speak would be from maybe 3 feet away, maybe not in a pandemic where people are socially distanced and twice that distance away from you. However, if you were talking about normal speech, not during a pandemic, or maybe talking to someone in your house, normally you're going to speak maybe roughly about 3 feet away from someone. That is a very comfortable distance to be away from someone. And that's a good, comfortable distance for you to be able to hear someone and understand them as well. So when you're speaking to someone, expect about that kind of detail. Now, microphones are designed to be tested and used at a distance not right up on them. This is the reason why the frequency response graphs of many microphones is tested at a distance of 1 meter away. Some are more, some are less. But as a rule, that's what most people follow, and it might have something to do with the fact that that is an appropriate distance for you to be away from someone when you're speaking to them. Now, if a mic is designed to have a certain sound at 1 meter away, and people are used to communicating and speaking to someone at a comfortable distance of about 1 meter away, then why do you suddenly feel it's normal to get right up on your microphone and speak into their ear? Closer is not normal. It's more intimate. Just like if you were to speak sweet nothings into your significant other's ear, they're going to hear that, and they're going to be maybe having that ASMR type effect where it's basically messing with your involuntary nervous system and causing, goose pimples or goosebumps, whatever the culture that you're in calls it. My point here is, it does not need to be something that you do routinely. Get right up on top and swallow a microphone because you feel that that's going to make your sound better. Now, I understand. Sometimes you will be in a very reverberant room, and you might have to adjust your audio accordingly. If you're in a very, very reverberant room, obviously don't yell. Speak a lot more candidly, speak more closed. Sure, panel anything you can, try to absorb that up, and that's a different conversation altogether. But if you're in that kind of environment, if you yell, it's going to make it worse, because it's going to reverb throughout the room much more. The power in your voice is not going to be able to reflect off of nearly as many surfaces if you speak more normal. And that doesn't mean that you need to find yourself whispering for this entire podcast or YouTube content creation thing you're doing. Or if you're a gamer, whatever, you don't need to do this just because you're in a reverberant space and you don't want to end up having it be too much out. Don't do that, okay? You're going to be out of control if you do something like that. Sorry for messing with the microphone and all the noise on that. Here's the thing. Movies and TV shows use mics that are farther away, and they still have that cinematic sound and cinematic richness, don't they? Television shows, news anchors, for example, they're going to be wearing lav mics. But if you watch a late night show or you watch your favorite podcasts or even political shows or something like that on YouTube, let's say, they usually have a mic kind of far away from them, like mine is right now. You don't usually see pop filters on them either, do you? That's because they're far enough away for you not to be blowing on it with your mouth in plosives. You don't have to. Have it away a little bit, and it's going to sound more natural, sound more like someone is having a more candid type, regular discussion with you. You don't have to get right up on that microphone even for it to sound rich. That, again, is something that can be created in post. Now, you may say, where did all this come from? If it's so bad, then why do we have this whole thing of people wanting to get all the way up on a microphone? Well, very simple. Radio. When you don't have to worry about camera and you're just worried about the way that you sound, usually people are going to be closer to a microphone than they are if they're on camera like I am right now. YouTube content creator. Now, if you're just doing a podcast, sure, you could be right up on that microphone if you want to, but I would emphasize that you don't need to. A lot of radio hosts are going to naturally have soothing, rich, deeper voice. Even the women are going to have more rich voices, especially if you put them in a very controlled environment and it is naturally tuned to be the way that it should sound best when it goes on over the air. But unless you're born with a radio personality type voice, then it's not something you need to artificially go for. Now, they may be amped up and they're still being themselves, but you should be too. Radio personalities bring what they have to the table. Now, sometimes they'll be going to be laughing jokingly, maybe putting on characters, something like that. That's part of their show. That's part of their work. Now, you could say, I'm a podcaster. I do that kind of thing too. Be yourself. Sure, you can put on a show. You can amp yourself up. Like right now, I'm pretty amped up. My voice has gone higher. You don't need to go all the way up on a microphone in order to give yourself an artificial sound just to try to create something that sounds more radio. It is not going to make you sound more cinematic if you swallow a shotgun microphone and then you do your television show or movie with a shotgun microphone right here on you. It's not going to sound more cinematic. Post can easily create that if you give them a good track in a quiet background noise and they're on mic. That's the trick right there. Be on microphone. Have that microphone pointed at your mouth or whoever's mouth, and then it's going to be appropriate. Now, here's something else to consider. Many times people listen to things like podcasts in a car, perhaps in earbuds or closed ear headphones, something like this. What do we usually do for a lot of those kinds of things, especially if we listen to music? We boost the bass. So therefore, you're going to have an overly bass boosted headphones or speaker system or your car system. And then you're going to be speaking into the microphone really close, pushing that proximity effect, that emphasis on the bass frequencies that happens when you get close to a microphone. You're going to be pushing that out of your car stereo, out of your speakers, out of everything. And it's not going to sound the way it should if it were natural. Everything shouldn't sound that way, but everything does if you constantly put yourself very close to a microphone and you process it. Perhaps you say, oh, well, I want to boost the bass some more. And then someone listens to it on a very rich in bass sound system. You don't need to have your voice go through a subwoofer, but if anyone listens to your voice through their home sound system and you boosted the bass and you push the proximity effect, there is a chance that you're not going to be using a roll-off, a low pass filter. And therefore, you're going to be boosting the bass up and they're going to hear all of that. If you go out on a date with somebody and you put on a big show, saying that you love to take hikes in the Himalayas in the winter, and you love then taking ice baths in Minnesota in the middle of the winter, and then you suddenly say, oh, it's summer now, I love taking hikes and camping in the middle of the woods, when you hate all of that stuff. If you do all of that and you're putting on the big show for whoever you're dating, as soon as you go back to being the person that you are, what's going to happen? That person's going to lose interest. They're going to wonder what they ever saw in you to begin with. It's because you lied to get there. If you put on a show for your audience trying to be something that you're not, they're going to see straight through you, whether it's at the beginning or it's eventually. And if they don't like you or what you're bringing or something that you're doing that they don't like, when you suddenly go back to being yourself, they're going to leave. So your audience is very much like somebody that you're dating. You got to present to them who you are. When I first met my wife, what I told her is the guy I am right now is the same guy you're going to see in 50 years from now. Sure, I'm going to mature a little bit, but that's going to happen with age anyway. It's not like I put on a big fancy show for her at the very beginning. Sure, I'm nice. I'm a nice guy. But I told her at the very beginning, I'm not going to put on an act and tell you all the wonderful things I've ever done in my life. I'll tell you what my interests are. I'll tell you that I like my toilet paper to go over rather than under. I like my cheese sandwiches to have a little star shape to them. I told her all this kind of stuff, even though she could think I'm a complete psycho. But I wanted her to understand that this is me. This is who I am. I'm not going to change because the A and the C are embedded in me. And if I change anything that is me, then it is not going to be me. It is going to be something that you're trying to correct a behavior of the way I'm acting, and therefore have it correct the A or the C, the attitude or the characteristics. That doesn't need to happen. Be yourself. Now, me being loud and yelling in your ear, quietly, constantly whispering, You don't need to do that on the microphone. Just speak normal. That's the key. Get off of the mic and be yourself. Be who you are. Right now, I'm being myself. I'm very, very animated when I speak to people, especially when I'm passionate about a topic like I am when I talk about sound. If you've ever seen me in person, you know this is very much me. This is not me trying to put on an act for my YouTube channel. I don't have to do that. You've seen me in live streams. I do this kind of stuff and talk nonstop. And of course, I did exactly what I said I'm not going to do because it's my nature, the A and the C, the attitude and the characteristics, to completely not look at my notes and go off on tangents. But that's me. If you're watching this right now, tell me in the comments that you're watching right now. But the reason why you're there and writing that in the comments is because you perhaps like me as a person. You perhaps like the information I bring, my presentation method, something of that realm. Now, sure, it's fun to put on a character sometimes and to do voices and to perhaps get up on a microphone and do a or whatever you do. My point here is, for the love of God, be who you are when you're on the microphone. Sounding natural is sounding good. Know your microphone. Now, if you're speaking into a dynamic microphone, then obviously you're going to have to be closer than you will if you're on a condenser. If you're in an untreated environment, you're going to have to treat things differently than you would if it were treated. Or did I say that correctly? Untreated environment, the same way as you would treat it? Okay, you get my point here. You got to know your gear. You got to know your microphone. If it's a condenser like this and you're in a relatively treated space, like it's completely open to the room and there's hard walls over there, but it's a distance away. I know this room and I know that my voice is going to sound pretty effective for what I'm doing here if I do this. I have not used a pop filter on this microphone in a while. If you watch my podcast, you'll realize that I don't speak into the SM7B with the windscreen on because I don't like it. I don't have to use a pop filter. I don't have to use the windscreen because I'm not all the way up on that microphone trying to crush my voice into the microphone and trying to get it to pick up every little aspect of my voice, trying to push it to be something that it doesn't need to be when it's amplified on your sound system or in your headphones. I hope I've made my point here. You yourself are what people are coming to see. Sure, they may be interested in a new microphone, a new camera, or whatever you do on your channel, and you're bringing them that information. But most of the people that are subscribed to your channel and listen to your podcast are there for you and to see what you are bringing to them today. If someone does a random search and happens to find a review that you are doing on a particular topic, then sure, they may say, oh, this is cool, and I like you. But if I am talking to you about a microphone like this one right here, I'm going to demonstrate it. I'm going to show you everything it can do. And if you are on my channel because you like me, you're going to stay with me, whether I'm reviewing this microphone or a piece of garbage microphone, or I've borrowed a very, very expensive microphone, whatever. If I'm talking to you about something you care about and you like me though, you'll subscribe, you'll stay on the channel, and you'll be with me for the long run. But my main point here is you are the product of your channel. You don't need to change yourself for your audience. Your attitude, your characteristics are the reason why you're putting yourself out there to the world. Don't change your behavior because you feel that you need to. Have a question you'd like answered or want to add something? Be sure to write it in the comment section down below. You can also make a suggestion for future topics of discussion. Again, comment section down below, or you can email me at soundspeeds@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on future sound advice.